Hello, everyone. We want to thank you. I say thank you to everyone who was here for our East Oakland Community Emission Reduction Plan Steering Committee meeting number 20. And for all of those online, thank you for showing up. We appreciate you being there. And so I'm going to pass this off to our interpreter for instructions for everyone.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la reunión número 20 del Comité Directivo Comunitario CSC por sus siglas en inglés. Se proporcionará interpretación al español. Entonces, en los controles de la reunión o el seminario web, podrán ver en la parte inferior o la parte de abajo en la barra de tareas. Haga clic una vez que activen el canal de español, haga clic en interpretación. Haga clic en el idioma que desee escuchar, español o Spanish, y es opcional para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado. Haga clic en silenciar audio original. Podrá ver que dice MUTE, original audio. Si está reuniéndose con nosotros con un teléfono inteligente, busque los 3 puntitos y vaya al icono del mundito y haga clic en interpretación y otra vez al idioma que desee escuchar, que es español o Spanish, y de nuevo es opcional para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado. Haga clic en silenciar audio original. Muchas gracias.
Thank you for that interpretation. And everyone, I did forget to introduce myself as one of the co-chairs, Mr. Charles, and our other 2 co-chairs, Ms. Ayana Johnson and Ms. Michaela Patton.
Hey, y'all.
Remote. All right, and so next slide, please. So to our meeting objectives for tonight, CSC members will understand what the Air District and CBE are currently doing to address the East Oakland community's ongoing air pollution concerns with a focus on community health and commercial and industrial sources. CSC members will receive education on civil rights and environmental justice. And please recognize everyone, this is our generation's civil rights movement. And CSC members and community will continue crafting concern statements and strategy objectives. Next. All right, please. Okay, so our meeting agenda. Welcome and agenda, we've done that, or are in the process of doing that. Then we will have a spotlight on environmental justice. This is Juneteenth month. And we wanted to make sure that the historical impact of Black people in environmental justice is recognized. The CSC 19 recap, then commercial and industrial sources presentation activity, 35 minutes. Then we'll have a break if we get there on time, but we'll try to make sure we get there on time for y'all. And a strategy brainstorm, our commercial and industrial focus area, and then our Argent discussion report out. Then, of course, we'll be closing out, and hopefully everyone will have a great meeting tonight. Next. And of course, everyone knows that we have initial meeting agreements and notes for participation. We all want to be respectful, one voice. Have grace for ourselves and one another. Take care of yourself if you need to. Some of us are eating right now. Mutual respect, empowerment, active listening. And of course, we want to allow everyone to participate. And that's one of the great things about the hybrid is that everyone has an opportunity to participate. Then, of course, we'll be popcorning just to induce people to participate. And for any questions throughout the meeting, if in person, please raise your hand. to ask a question, and if on Zoom, addition to hand raising, you may also use the Zoom chat. CBE and BACMed staff will be responding to your questions promptly. Next slide. And of course, our community building for those in the Zoom room, your name, your pronouns, any affiliated organizations. Community building on Zoom, please use the chat and the reaction emojis to inspire and encourage one another. And please feel free to add your opinions in there so that we can hear what you're really feeling and thinking. And CSC members, please raise your hand if you are not able to type into the chat, and we will have you speak aloud. And now I will be passing it off to staff to give their report on where we are today.
Great, thanks, Mr. Charles. And hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Alicia Shao from the Air District. It's really nice to see everyone. This is where we are today. And we show this at every meeting to ground us in where we are in the plan process. So we are currently in June and Q2 of 2024. So happy June, happy summer. As a reminder, we've done quite a bit as a group, and we've worked through our purple scope and organize phase, and mostly through our orange assess the challenges phase. So we're currently in light blue here, which is our plan our solutions phase, which is the plan portion of the SERP, and where we are focusing on strategy development. So tonight we'll hear more about commercial and industrial sources from the Air District about our authority and our permitting process, and CBE around their advocacy and campaigning work. We'll continue brainstorming strategy work by diving deeper in the commercial and industrial sources focus area and work on concern statements to understand the concerns better that we've already heard from you, and start to create solutions and hear about the desired outcomes if those concerns were addressed. And that's all I have for here. So I can pass it to Michaela to get us started.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna be really quick because we're actually gonna show a video instead of us talking at y'all for the whole time. And I think the video really speaks for itself. But yeah, June is a really amazing month. I think it has so much history, so much radical history, and especially we wanted to root this month in Juneteenth and just the overall collective struggle and resilience of Black folks, Indigenous folks, and all folks of color. So yeah, there's a really cool video that kind of takes a deeper dive into the intersectional history of environmental justice, starting with colonization, even going to Dr. Robert Bullard, who we all may know as the father of environmental justice. We're not gonna have time to show the whole thing or have too much time for like comments. So please use the chat for like reactions, thoughts, comments, perspectives, how this applies to Oakland and our work here. And then I'll also be dropping the link to this video as well as the brief history video, which I think gives like a good synopsis of like the environmental justice movement. So yeah, I think y'all can play the video.
Existing with Turtle Island, pre-16th century. Before colonizers made their way to Turtle Island, thriving indigenous communities coexisted with the land, flora, and fauna. Although indigenous cultures and beliefs are deeply intricate and varied across regions, there are many resonances between different tribal nations' land stewardship traditions. Before this land was colonized in the 16th century, people lived as nature rather than separate from nature, with the entitlement of dropping in on nature to hunt, build, or otherwise take from Mother Earth. An aligned relationship between people and the planet allowed communities to consciously tend to and be nourished by the environment, without the destruction or exploitation that we see so frequently today. During this time frame, we can observe reciprocity, which is rooted in the idea that as humans, we belong to the land, rather than owning it. This reciprocity manifested in many ways, namely compassionate land stewardship and giving back to the land for all that it gives to us. Colonization, beginning in the 1500s. Throughout colonization and westward expansion, a close connection between the genocide of indigenous peoples and breakdown of natural ecosystems takes shape. As a reference, let's consider bounties placed on buffalo and bison as white colonizers moved westward. These buffalo bounties and slaughter were a means of starving indigenous communities into submission, both physically and culturally. In the 1500s, bison numbered between 60 to 30 million, but by the late 1800s, only 1,000 were left. Once indigenous communities were stripped of their livelihoods and rendered docile, the white colonizers could continue acting upon manifest destiny. Land and resources that were once inherent to the traditions and day-to-day life of indigenous communities would become commodified. Due to the massive ideological shifts rooted in feudalism and soon to be capitalism, the exploitation of land, labor, and the planet to generate profit is looming. It's important to note that data tracking is a Western way of measuring and indicating change and impact, one that is necessitated by a capitalist system. While resurfacing narratives preceding the rise of capitalism, we prefer to refrain from using such methods of tracking impact. Given that those privileged enough to have their stories heard and circulated in their truest form were often white environmentalists and conservationists, BIPOC stories surrounding environmentalism and environmental justice were deliberately erased, silenced, and ignored. 1800s, environmental justice and American identity, a vicious loop. As the American identity begins to take hold, so did the understanding of what identity actually looked like. The American identity has historically been reserved exclusively for WASP men, who were entitled to stolen land and a privileged way of life that BIPOC communities were and continue to be denied. At this time, the struggle for environmental justice refers to the resistance against state-sanctioned genocide via police brutality and calculated sacrifice zones, forced assimilation via systemic racism and white supremacy, and enslavement via capitalist structures that specifically target anyone who isn't white and affluent. It's important to keep in mind that maintaining an existence in the face of exploitation, genocide, erasure, and destruction to one's way of life and cultural traditions, which sustains and protects the environment, is environmental justice work. Early 1900s, industrialization and degradation of urban environment. In the 1900s, we began to see the rise of industrialization and the environmental degradation that inevitably comes along with it. Free of regulations, manufacturing and energy-producing industries constantly polluted the surrounding air, land, and water, destroying the urban centers that they were built within and the more rural environments in close proximity. The destruction didn't stop there. Unregulated manufacturing wreaked havoc on the health of BIPOC, working-class people, and immigrants as they were forced to navigate dangerous working conditions, dangerous industries, and polluted, unsafe living environments and neighborhoods.
Now, the railroad story is celebrated with this famous photograph by A.J. Russell. Some people really are upset by this photo, particularly some in the Chinese American community who say they're upset because we're the Chinese. They were excluded. Were they excluded? They're not in the frame. They're not in the photo. They're not in the history. And this is symbolic of that erasure, that neglect.
There are so many people struggling with the effects of DDT. The Bracero program, for example, started in the late 40s as a way to shore up the labor shortage and invite Mexican farm workers to join the agricultural workforce. And they experienced horrible working conditions. They were subjected to a lot of racial violence at the border. And before they could even cross the border, the government sprayed them with DDT.
At the same time, white folks who contributed to this pollution fled to cleaner suburban neighborhoods with access to green spaces, and thanks to racial and economic redlining, BIPOC were forced and kept out.
I can understand an individual, depending on his environment or his family or whatever, being racist, but for your country to sanction it, give him tools to do that, there's something definitely wrong there.
Those communities that were all white, suburban, and far away from minority areas, they received the highest rating, and that was the color green. Those communities that were all minority or in the process of changing, they got the lowest rating, and the color red. They were redlined.
Mid to late 1900s, movements for change. In the mid-1900s, there was a rise in mass movements and mobilizations for change, such as the Civil Rights Movement, Farm Workers' Rights Movement, and movements for equality, public housing, and public recreational spaces. These movements all overlapped with, and further the goals of, the environmental justice movement, which began to take shape in the 1980s.
From the 30s up until 1978, that 5 out of 5 of the city-owned landfills were in black neighborhoods. 6 out of 8 of the city-owned incinerators were in black neighborhoods, and 3 out of 4 of the privately owned landfills were in black neighborhoods, even though blacks only made up 25% of the population during that period of time. Environmental justice also means having access to decisions that are being made and making sure that it's access, and that no one segment of our city or county or region should be making decisions for other people.
Education doesn't protect us from environmental injustice.
Yeah, thank you. Pause it there. Yeah, like I said, we don't have a ton of time because I mean, we're literally doing the EJ work right now, as y'all heard in the video. And I think as probably everybody knew already, this has been going on for literally decades, and also the government has had a big role in it. So we're going to need that same amount of planning, that same amount of government intentionality to like reverse a lot of these decisions and just like better our health and our environment. So I just wanted everybody to hopefully ground ourselves in kind of June and the resilience of all of our ancestors, all of our cultures, as we talk more about strategy development for East Oakland. So yeah, that's it. And I will pass it on.
Happy 14th, everybody.
Say that again.
Happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Yes, yes. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. And thank you, Michaela.
I just have one question. Michaela, is there a way possible that you could have, I like to have a copy of those,
The whole video?
the video itself, yes. I like to have a copy of those.
Yeah, I think we can definitely work on getting you a link, and then also maybe like a downloaded version that we can maybe send to you or something like that for sure.
Yeah, because I like to have a hard copy of the and that's something I can't think of the word I want to say. That's okay.
It's okay.
I can't think of the word.
Miss Cecilia, we'll make sure that everybody has access to the video, all CSC members.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I had a hard copy of those.
Okay. And if we can now pass it off to Carly.
Yes.
Or,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, that was a great video. It has some very important history in there that goes into current times. Yeah, so I'm Carly. I'm with CBE. I'm the East Oakland Clean Air Project Coordinator. And I'll just go over the last month's meeting recap real quick and go to the next slide. Thank you. Some objectives of the last meeting. One of the main areas that we touched on was having some West Oakland and Richmond, North Richmond, San Pablo CSC members come in to our meeting to explain what their experience was like in their process. And yeah, we had Richard Grove from West Oakland, and then we had Marisol Cantu and then Alfredo Angulo to share their experiences. And in that, East Oakland CSC members learn more about their components of those processes. And then CSC members also gained insight into what their process was like for their search. Next slide, please. Another main component that we touched on in the last meeting was furthering our focus area for transportation and mobile sources when we had our breakout activity to do some strategy development. So you all East Oakland CSC members worked on that, specifically focusing on highways, freeways, and then truck-related businesses and commercial trucking. And this will all be synthesized soon so that we can further that. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Steve Reed. Actually, Adele Watts will not be here for this section. It'll actually be CBE's East Oakland Youth Organizer, Gustavo, and then Allison with the Air District.
Thank you, Carly. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm Steve Reed from the Air District. I work in our assessment, inventory, and modeling section. You might remember me from a couple of prior meetings where I've come to talk about emission inventory information, and I'm going to be doing that again tonight. So as Alicia mentioned earlier, the focus of tonight's meeting, or one main focus of tonight's meeting, is commercial and industrial sources in East Oakland. And of course, many of those sources operate under permits that are issued by the Air District. So we want to circle back to the emission inventory that we presented in August and take a closer look at the permitted sources within that inventory. What do they tell us? What does that information tell us about which ones might be of the most concern for us and might be the target of strategies and actions in the plan? So if we go on to the next slide, with that goal in mind, district staff have worked with CBE to develop a permitted emission inventory summary report. You should all have received a copy of that and have it available to you tonight. That's going to be a resource during the breakout sections. And so I want to just spend a little time kind of walking you through some of the elements of this report and some of the information in it, just to orient you to what it might be able to tell you and how it might be able to serve you as we start to look at some of these sources within the community. So if we go on to the next slide, one thing that I want to remind us of is that the emission inventory covers three main categories of air pollutants. And when we start to look at individual sources, we want to think of them in terms of these three buckets of pollution, if you will. Now, all of these pollutants that we're going to talk about here are harmful, but they are tracked in different ways and they're regulated in different ways. And so that's why we kind of have these different buckets. So the first one, the top row there, is criteria air pollutants, and those are regulated based on air quality standards that are meant to establish safe levels of that particular pollutant, or what could be defined as clean air. So an example that's really important for East Oakland is fine particulate matter, or PM 2.5, which can cause serious health effects and even premature death. And so that's tracked through ambient air quality standards that actually just got strengthened quite recently. But really, there's no safe levels of fine particulate matter. And so we want to take a special look at that pollutant because of its potential health effects. Another category, the second row on this column here, or this table here, is toxic air contaminants. And these are different kinds of compounds that have been identified by CARB and EPA as having the potential to cause cancer or other serious health effects. And unlike the criteria air pollutants, there's no safe exposure levels for air toxics. So an important one for the East Oakland community is diesel particulate matter. There's a lot of freeways and diesel sources in the community, and that's a pollutant that has been linked to incidences of cancer. And then the last category is just a different way of looking at air toxics. So it's called toxicity weighted emissions. And the idea there is that all of these different pollutants have different levels of toxicity. They cause different kinds of harm or health effects. And so we want to be able to compare them to each other. And we also want to be able to compare sources to each other. So you might have two industries that are sitting side by side, and they're emitting a different mix or a different soup of pollutants. And this is a way of sort of figuring out which one is potentially worse for the people who live in that area. So we can weight the emissions that are coming from those two facilities and figure out which one has kind of the higher overall toxicity. So that's the idea of doing this toxicity weighting. It's to be able to look at the mix of pollutants that are coming from a particular facility, because most sources emit more than one pollutant. So if we go on the next slide, what we've done here is dig into the emission inventory, just the permitted sources. So this doesn't include cars and trucks and sources at the airport. This is really just looking at permitted stationary sources in the community and surrounding area. And what we've tried to do is isolate a top 10 list to say what are likely the top 10 sources, permitted sources of greatest concern in East Oakland. And we've looked at some of those pollutants that I just listed on the previous slide. So we've looked at toxicity weighted emissions that cause chronic health effects like asthma or hypertension. We looked at toxicity weighted emissions that lead to cancer. And then we looked at PM 2.5 because of its health effects, which again include premature mortality. And so what you can see here is that this relative handful of polluters is responsible for the majority of emissions from the permitted sources in the community. And so if we take these 10 sources, they are responsible for 91% of permitted source PM 2.5 emissions, over 60% of permitted source cancer toxicity weighted emissions, and 84% of chronic toxicity weighted emissions in East Oakland. And so there are a lot of permitted sources, but these are the ones that appear to be, based on the emission inventory, of greatest concern. And if you start to look at these individual pollutants, you can see that different facilities kind of pop out at you based on the color coding here on these bars. So for chronic effects, for example, that top bar, you can see that the two crematories pop out at you as being of special concern. If you look at that middle bar for cancer-causing air toxics, you can see that cultured marble products, that's a source of styrene because of the spray booths and some of the coatings that they use for their products. So that is a facility that jumps out at you. And then for PM 2.5, there's a few, but you can see Davis Street Transfer Center is a big source of particulate matter. The Miller Milling Company is another one, and then Pete's Coffee and Tea as well. So there's a handful that really jump out at you. So these are some of the sources we're going to be taking a closer look at tonight when we get into our breakout session. But we wanted to kind of orient you to why some of those are rising to the top. And of course, these are things we've heard from you as being of concern as well. And the emission inventory really bears that out. And then this last slide I want to share just shows the locations of these top 10 facilities. You can see they're pretty scattered throughout the community. Some actually lie just outside the formal community boundary because we want to consider nearby sources that still have an effect within the community, even though they might lie just outside of it, like cultured marble products. And you can see that several of them are located along the 880 corridor. A lot of times these industries need freeway access, so that's kind of expected. So this is, again, meant to be a resource to you to help you learn more about some of these facilities, also provide you an opportunity to bring your knowledge, what your concerns and experiences are around some of these facilities. And then during our breakout section, we're going to be drilling down and looking at some of these more closely and talking about strategies that could be brought to bear to reduce emissions from some of these types of permitted sources. So with there, we're going to transition to CBE, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of their advocacy work around stationary sources. I don't know if we have a minute to take any questions, but I also can take questions later during the breakouts if things come up. So I'll pass it to CBE unless there are any questions.
Okay, thanks y'all. My name is Gustavo. I'm a youth organizer with Communities for a Better Environment. Yeah, and I'd like to talk a little bit about CBE's work around stationary sources pollution, specifically touching on the advocacy piece and also kind of the changes and the accomplishments that came from CBE's advocacy in terms of like rules and like regulations that were passed and yeah, generally just wins that the community experienced. So first of all, CBE's work around stationary sources of pollution falls under the umbrella of the Freedom to Breathe campaign. which is the campaign that CBE first initiated when they started working in East Oakland in 2007. And this campaign was bolstered by community support and community education. And a lot of it was localized. So it was born out of relationships that were made with specific schools and specific communities that were very close to sources of industrial pollution, and where, that pollution was really felt, and through the smells in the air, the headaches that would, come as a result of pollution, nosebleeds, etc. So it was very felt. And from what I've heard from people, who were involved in this advocacy, yeah, it was very easy to relate to people because many people were having, similar experiences. And, when it came to light that, for example, that there was a foundry, down the road about like half a mile away from like an elementary school, people started to connect the dots, right? And see how those pollution sources existed in the context of, like redlining and community disinvestment, and generally just kind of like abandonment, from, the kind of like institutional pathways that we have in order to like addressing these harms. And so community members like took it upon themselves to do collections of air samples through a bucket brigade. They also really advocated for a health risk assessment to take place at ABNI Foundry. And a combination of these things is what led to the foundry finally being shut down. And there's a more clear timeline that'll come up in one of the following slides. But yeah, so what came from this? So some of the tactics were direct conversation with polluters. So there was an avenue of communication. And I don't think much came from that. And so the community had to look for other ways to address, these harms. And yeah, it took the form of community education and organizing, so really empowering community members to to make complaints, to be able to like navigate, the procedures in order to kind of to make complaints towards like certain polluters. The creation of like a group chat where community members will all coordinate and say like, hey, I'm smelling this right in my home, is anybody else smelling that? Like, let's all get together and make our complaints together. So there was kind of this like, yeah, there's like horizontal like organizing going on. Yeah, and there was pressure to get government agencies to use existing administrative procedures, so the rules that were already at their disposal in order to to hone in on these pollution sources and to make sure that everything is within what's being permitted. So one of those was notice of violations and also a health risk assessment. And so specifically with ABNI, they hadn't had a health risk assessment, and they've been operating in East Oakland for 100 years. So there was this whole host of like pollutants like hexavalent chromium, which causes cancer, which weren't being accounted for. And next slide, please. And yeah, so this led to CBE and the Attorney General suing ABNI using Prop 65, which is, where you see the signs and it's like, hey, you're entering a place where there's, the state of California knows that these kinds of things can cause cancer. So they weren't following the law, and so they fell into that lawsuit. There's also an EPA investigation, and then public nuisance lawsuit, which was also initiated. And it's important to note that all of this happened because community members, were just kind of really, pushing and organizing. And we can go to the next slide. And yeah, last thing I'll say is that from this advocacy, BACMed and CBE were able to collaborate and come up with something called Rule 1118, which was an agreement to enhance the 1118 regulation, which is health risk assessments. So yeah, addressing that it hadn't been happening, making sure that in the future that would be integrated and prioritized. And I think that's the last slide. Unfortunately, there's no more time for questions. It's really important that we get into the group activity. But I'll put my email in the chat and Adele's email in the chat, and definitely reach out to us. And there's a lot of people in the room who have, firsthand experience with this.
Okay. Thank you, Gustavo. This is Allison Kirk from the Air District, and we are going to go into our breakout activity. I have some slides here, and basically it's an example of how the Air District protects the community through our work on rules, engineering, and compliance and enforcement. And we have a hypothetical example of an auto body shop. But what we're going to do is we're going to move ahead, and I'm going to move our slides ahead to, I think it's slide 30, and tell you a little bit about our activity. So it's your turn to dig into the emissions inventory report and use it as a scavenger hunt tool. We're going to break into 3 pre-assigned groups and take a look at the report. Your group will be assigned to a top polluter identified in the report. In-person folks will focus on cremation sources. Group 2 online, there'll be 2 groups online. One group online will be on cultured marble products, and the other group online will be the Davis Street transfer station. Groups will have 10 minutes to answer these questions. Quickly choose a facilitator to lead the exercise and a volunteer to report out on your findings. And we have one question we'll show you later about the report out. So Air District staff will be available in each group to answer questions. Our next slide will show everybody the questions that we're hoping folks can answer by looking at the emissions inventory report. The questions for each breakout group are: what is the air quality concern? What are the health consequences or impacts of the concern on the community? What is a rules, engineering, or compliance and enforcement-based strategy that addresses this concern? And we have a bonus question: who are additional partners that should be involved or consulted to address the concern, and why? So groups will have 10 minutes to answer these questions, and you can refer to your permitted source emissions inventory report for answers. And I can ask if there's any questions on the scavenger hunt, and I can pass it to Massam to help us get into groups.
Thank you, Allison. So folks, we're gonna go into breakout now, and I'm gonna open one online breakout room. Folks are pre-assigned, and anyone who needs Spanish translation should stay in the main breakout room. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Evergreen Cemetery and East Bay.
Gracias, aquí está.
Sorry, let me just disconnect.
Breakout group. For this activity, we're going to be using this the East Oakland emissions inventory report that was covered during the presentation. All of the answers to the questions that the 4 questions that Allison covered are in this report. And so how this is going to go is similar to how we did at when we did this similar scavenger hunt at one of the previous. We're going to ask for volunteers.
Kind of hard to hear from our end.
One to do a report out.
Is that your way of fading us out to our room?
Folks, you shouldn't be able to hear anything from here. Go ahead and get started, please.
Question, Mawsum, is this everyone that's supposed to be in the main room for the breakout, or have folks already transitioned to the other rooms if they're supposed to move?
I haven't been sent over yet. This is Carol.
Let me figure out. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
So folks have not gotten invitations to join a room yet?
Nope, not yet.
Nope, not yet.
Hold on. Actually, no, this is fine. You all are supposed to be here. Sorry, go ahead.
You think we could talk
Because we have
right
we have a yellow piece of paper up now, and I think they can hear us in the regular room.
No, they cannot. They cannot
Oh,
hear
they
you.
can't? Can we use this as our breakout room then?
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh,
This is
okay.
your breakout.
Gotcha.
So just to jump in, Mawsum, I think there's some folks in this room that need to move. So for example, Allison is leading one of or she'll be placed in the breakout room along with Alicia for technical support. And then myself and Diana are going to remain in, I believe, the main room.
Right. So Allison should have gotten a message to join the other room, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reopen all of them and invite folks back.
Okay.
Okay. Folks who are supposed to join the other room should have gotten an invite. Okay, I see folks disappearing. So should have worked this time around.
Okay, Mawsum, I think it's working, so I'll just wait another moment or two while people transition over.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that this is our group. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can see me and you aren't also just looking at a big yellow piece of paper. But my name is Carissa White. I'm a staff specialist on the community engagement team. And myself and Diana are in this space with you guys today to provide technical support for this breakout activity. So I tonight will be in the role of supporting with screen share as well as taking notes. And just to remind folks, this activity is for the Davis Street Transfer Station Breakout Room. And so for tonight's activity, CSC members will use the Permitted Sources Emissions Inventory Report to help you learn more about how your assigned facility impacts air quality and health in East Oakland. And then you'll also be looking for actions that the Air District can take to further reduce emissions from these sources. So I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing the Jamboard. And while I do that, I believe Diana's going to put some resources in the chat for you guys. And that includes, I think, a link to the Jamboard, a link to the Permitted Sources report in both English and Spanish. And then let me go ahead and figure out screen share.
I had a quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Ayana.
Okay. Is it just what the Air District would do or what the CSC and the Air District would do?
I'm assuming you can come up with both, Ayana. So both what East Oakland residents can do as well as what the Air District can do to further reduce emissions from these sources. So I hope you guys can see my screen. I am going to ask for some support today. So if I can get 2 volunteers, the first volunteer will be the facilitator, and then the second person will report back when we get over to back into the main room with everyone else. but can, by way of raised hands, or you can come off of mute, see if there's a CSE member that would like to volunteer for either one of those roles.
I can facilitate or whatever, but I wanted to give the CSE member the chance.
Okay, thanks, Ayana.
Did anybody want to attempt to go?
Hi, this is Carol. Unfortunately, I'm having a bunch of trouble with my TMJ. I'm trying to save my mouth until I have the thing later this evening. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Anybody else?
We do need a reporter, someone to report out to the larger groups if someone else would like to do that. And I think you'd be a great facilitator.
Okay, I just don't want to take up space.
If no one has capacity, I just wanted to make some room also, for members. But I know we're kind of short on time, so.
And I think they're talking about not doing not doing report outs this evening at the end. It says skip report and breakouts around 6:57. And then a few minutes break.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Okay, great. So then, Ayana, I'll pass it off to you to get us started with facilitation, and I'll just move us through the slides. But if you need support with anything, just let me know.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we're doing our activity. We're doing a closer look on our permitted resources. So the resources are in the chat. So if you guys could go ahead and review chat. So go to our Jamboard. Are you guys able to hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm opening Jamboard.
Yes.
Give it 1 second, it's loading. Is everybody already there? Oh, I'm having some Jamboard complications.
I have it.
It's coming together. Oh, let's see. Is it on the main screen? I think I'm having an issue. Let me go back.
I am screen sharing it, Ayana, so I'm curious, can other...
Okay, let's do the screen share. Thanks. Sorry about that. So what is so anybody want to input what is the air quality concern for that location on Davis Street?
So I just want to also be clear, I think maybe people having some background about what the Davis Street transfer station is in case they don't know. So from what I know, it's managed by Waste Management. I don't know if any other Air District staff can speak to, what the station does, what might be some sources of pollution here. Yeah, thanks.
Has anybody ever been at Davis Street transfer station? No? Okay. Do we have an image of it by chance? We can look online though, correct?
Hi, this is Pam Leong. I'm at the Air District. I'm in the permitting division, so I can help answer questions. So transfer station, they receive a lot of the, recyclables, waste, and then they're sorted and sent to other areas. And I think they also have composting at this one location. Most of the items are indoors, but you have a lot of trucks coming in, dumping the things inside and then leaving. So that's basically at a high level, how this station operates. Yeah. So they just call it, it's like a green waste building. That's one of the permitted sources. They have a lot of screens and conveyors, things to just move around a lot of this waste materials.
Well, if it's moving around, it does produce waste. How do we think it would affect air quality? Anybody? I would think because the trucks coming in and out, that would cause an emissions issue because the trucks are coming in and out of the facility, and with that comes exhaust. So I would think that would be one complication.
Yeah, Ayana, I don't know if you see, but Becca has their hand up. Becca?
Okay.
I was gonna add to that then, because looking at the resources y'all sent, they also transfer a lot of the trash to Livermore, so that definitely adds to even more gas transmissions.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to just popcorn and come out with it. You guys don't have to raise your hands because we're on a limited time minute.
Okay. Then, hi, I have a question. Is this the same to the transfer stations where there's like a big dump area of landfill of stuff before they actually process it?
Are you saying
Does
is that
anyone
where
know?
is that the processing site?
I'm asking, yeah, because I live probably 4 miles away, and I'm upwind. I mean, I'm down. I'm not in the wind, but when the wind shifts and starts moving northeast, it's about once a month, I guess, approximately. It starts smelling really bad over where I live.
So
I
it
think
could
that's
be
the
there.
same. That's what I said. Yeah, I think it's the same one. So I would say the smells, fumes from the debris and garbage that have been dropped there.
And I do think somebody had a question, Jamaica in chat.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering what, because I think what I heard was that this facility is a green waste, type of facility. So what exactly does that mean, or how does a company get deemed a green waste if all of what we're saying is being emitted into the air?
Oh, I'll just define that really quickly. So green waste is, like tree trimmings, things like that. So it's like, your green bin, your compostable bin. So that's green waste. So it can have like food and stuff in it.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I guess, sorry, Pamela, you were just saying that it was a company that accepts green waste, not necessarily a company that is deemed kind of like a green type of, stamp of approval.
Yeah, correct. That is
Okay.
different terminology. Yes, thanks for clarifying that.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else?
Sí,
Don't
yo,
be afraid
Marina.
to talk. Hi, Marina.
Pues es mi primera vez que oigo sobre esto, ¿verdad? No conozco la compañía, pero
Well, this is my
para
first
mí,
time that I hear about this. I'm really not familiar with the company, but my concern is when anything, any kind of waste goes rotten, it forms a gas, and that gas is contaminating us. So we need to figure out what it is. What chemical is being emitted towards our area? Towards how many miles how many miles can it contaminate? And also the way it's distributed, because there's a lot of cars that come that transport this out, and during that time, they're contaminating. We need to focus on what type of gas is being emitted or what chemical is being emitted. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good point, Marina. Thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think are the health consequences or the impact concerns on the community from these quality concerns? So let's start with the first one. So, transferring trash to other locations, what do we think the health consequences of that may be? I would think if they have to transfer trash, they may have, because of the exhaust that comes from the trucks, that impacts the air quality of our neighborhoods from here to Livermore.
Yeah, exactly what Becca said in the chat. Fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, destroying our lungs and eyes. Jamaica put idling truck emissions.
Okay. So you guys, should we put that in our sticky notes on our jam board?
Yeah, definitely the green. Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys want to go straight down and do each question? Because we have 2 minutes left to kind of knock it out quick.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay.
yo
What
puedo
rules?
opinar rápido en la verde.
Right. We
cuando
got
los
2 minutes.
camiones se muevan de
Marina
uno-
says I can give my opinion that when the trucks go from one place to the other, they make sure that whatever they're hauling or transferring is covered, so none of those bad chemicals are.
Strategy is to address the concern. What should we have in place?
Oh, Ayana, I just want
think
to
that goes
uplift
in
something that Carissa had put in the chat.
Okay.
If you can direct CSD members to refer to the report for answers to the 4 questions for this activity.
Okay. And it's in the chat. Got it.
So yeah, if you're all looking at the emissions report, right, there's maybe some answers to some of these questions within that report.
Right. Okay. So should we keep going? Like for the rest of the 4? For the green? Okay. So what about smells from the debris and garbage? What do you think the health
We've
consequences
got
are?
a minute left, so we may not be able to do that. Maybe we can just.
Yeah.
I think the notes in like asthma.
Right. I think
other
asthma would be
illnesses,
good.
respiratory. Yeah, respiratory, other asthma and other respiratory illnesses.
Right.
Yeah, I think, yeah, let's
Alergias, ahorita.
try to go to 3 and 4. I know we
Marina
have
says
very little
allergies.
time, so I think our time actually might be
Correct. I think Carly, are you saying we run out of time? We need to look at put the stuff in the Jamboard separately, like individually.
Yeah, like, I think people are totally welcome, if you have any time afterwards or anything, please feel free to fill out this Jamboard. There are like multiple pages that you could fill out, and then, looking at the emissions report to kind of guide you for this all these questions on the Jamboard.
Right.
Okay.
Will we do a report out? So
No, so Ayana, we're just gonna give folks a few minutes to break and then come back at around 7, and Alicia will introduce the next activity.
Got it. Thank you guys so much. We did a wonderful job for our time limit, but we did a wonderful job. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks, y'all.
La última no la contestamos nada.
So we're not going to answer the last 2? Marina's asking.
Sí.
Hay que involucrar a la compañía de.
Oh, usted se puso en no podemos oír qué está diciendo.
Incluir a la compañía que, ¿verdad? Que tome reglas en sus asuntos, ajá.
To include a company that's contaminating so that they can do something about it. That's what Marina added. Us as a committee, maybe investigate all the sources that are contaminating.
En 5 minutos de descanso.
Yeah, it looks like we're back in the room now.
Are there any that are smaller? Yeah, they're all on Coliseum Way. We smell it and driving on maybe. There's a couple of parallels to I guess, I mean, at least according to CBD. What? The Pete's one is no longer in the warehouse. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Oh. I didn't see that.
See, I just think that those that we know.
Pero dice que nos vamos a ir en 5 minutos. Okay.
Invest in
Are
ourselves.
we going or leaving in 5 minutes?
Ahorita van a reunirse otra vez.
Actividad nueva en un minuto, algo así.
Allison, are you able to screen share again?
Aquí estoy.
Part of that organ.
Sure. Okay, so let's give Allison a minute to be back and then we can introduce the next activity.
So I guess I'll stand here.
Are we starting now?
Just need, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'll just.
I just wanted from you
Yeah.
to hear on.
No worries. I'll stand kind of in the middle once we start.
Go ahead, Allison, whenever you're ready.
Hey, do you all see the slides again?
Yep.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for your engagement in activity 1. We wanted to, welcome you back into this next segment here. So, my name's Alicia Shao from the Air District. I work in the Air Quality Planning Division. And welcome to the strategy brainstorm. So the last activity really led us into, warming us up to follow up on our strategy development work. And this meeting has been all about commercial and industrial sources, and that's what we'll be focusing on for strategies. So next slide. And here's a reminder of where our focus areas sit in the strategy framework. And tonight we'll be working on the focus area highlighted here, our commercial and industrial sources concerns. And so just a reminder, this is a tool we're using to organize strategies. We want to build out the focus areas with concern statements to describe those concerns. And then we'll be building out strategies by identifying solutions and hearing those desired outcomes if those concerns were addressed. So in a moment, we'll be getting into the main activity of our evening. Next slide. So here we're going to be doing the breakout sessions on strategy development. You've all done this in past steering committee meetings. So the purpose here is to continue brainstorming and digging in deeper to understand the concerns that we all have heard from you on commercial and industrial sources. And so from our draft list of commercial and industrial sources community concerns, we group them into 3 subtopics. One is dust and other particulate matter sources, such as recycling and waste-related industrial activities, like Davis Street Transfer Station, warehouse developments like the ABNI redevelopment project, as well as construction activities. 2 is commercial auto body and smaller businesses, and this looks like auto body shops, commercial food and beverage production like Miller Milling, cannabis production, and backup diesel generators. And 3rd
Excuse me,
is
we can't see the screen share. We don't see this. I don't think we're all seeing the screen share. Oh, I'm gonna hang up and try again.
Oh,
okay.
I can see it. So
I
maybe
can see it.
Carol's.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up and
Okay.
retry. Never mind.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, and our 3rd one is are heavy industrial, crematory, and other toxic sources, such as heavy or high impact manufacturing like PCC structurals, crematories like East Bay Creamery, and hazardous material production and storage like Sterling Environmental. So in your same groups as the first activity, you'll be pre-assigned into one of the subtopics to work on. We acknowledge that folks won't be able to self-select into the breakouts this time, but we wanted to maximize our group time and synergy together. So we'll have about 25 minutes for brainstorming, and each group will be supported by a steering committee member facilitator, as well as Air District support staff to take notes and answer any questions you might have. We also have a few resources to support you in the breakouts printed for those in person, and we'll be linking them in our breakouts for those online. We have the permitted sources emissions inventory report, which we talked about earlier and used in activity 1. We also have familiar resources such as the strategy development resources reference guide, as well as the summary list of draft community concerns for commercial and industrial sources. We also have the Sterling Environmental example as a resource of brainstorming that CSC members have worked on in past meetings. So participants can also use the previous examples that came out of activity 1 to kind of help you through the brainstorm. We had a really good conversation and discussion, and we want to keep those going. So enough talking from me. We can move to breakouts now. For in-person folks, you'll be staying in the conference room. And for online folks, I'll pass it to Mawsum to move us into breakouts.
Thank you, Alicia. So I'm gonna open a room, same as previous one before, and if you get an invite, you should join it. If you don't, you're supposed to stay in this room.
Can I start or should I wait for you to finish? Oh, yeah. No problem. Are you gonna be timekeeping? I'm gonna. Okay. Okay, go ahead. So ready to go or? Yes. Okay. Oh, TJ is. Oh, thanks.
So just, I just wanna.
All right, so in this meeting Zoom room, you can go ahead and get started.
They said we can get started, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Hey y'all. Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, Chloe?
Go ahead.
No, you're good. Okay, for sure. Hey y'all, I'm Becca. I'm a part of the CSC Youth Board. I'll be your facilitator for today. Also, they, them pronouns. But
Yeah, wondering who is screen sharing for Becca. Thank
Yo.
you. Okay, great.
I'm screen sharing, Carly. So just let me know when you want to advance the slides.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much also. All right. Are we the commercial? I thought we were the.
Yeah, we are. It's just like a broader category, and then we're in like a subcategory of that.
Got you. Okay, cool. So yeah, we are group 3. We're gonna be the dust and other particle matter sources, like they were just saying before, very similar to the Davis Transfer Street, the green compost place, and also just recyclables. And these 3 yellow post-it notes are gonna be our focus. And same, well, not focus for the green ones, but we're gonna use these first, and then we'll have other sections to build up off of our own ideas. And some of the sections are still blank as well. But let me know if anyone has questions. I feel like we're all kind of familiar with Jamboard, but always shoot a question if you have a question. So you can go to the next slide, please. Cool. And if we can just like zoom in, because I know right now I can't read it.
Gonna attempt to zoom in. I don't know how well it works when I am screen sharing a Jamboard. So this is me zooming in. And I think it's just making the borders like this area bigger, but it's not making the actual Jamboard itself bigger.
Okay, got you. It's already in the chat, right, too, for folks to just like click on. If
Yeah.
not, Okay, yeah, I see it, JK. So it's also in the chat, so y'all could definitely click it real quick, and just go on there. We'll be on this page, obviously for about like 8 minutes. Or you can just zoom in yourself like I'm doing right now. Just a little zoom in with your fingers. So what is the concern? So we have it in English and Spanish, because we're inclusive here. But the first one says redevelopment of former AB&I foundry, environmental cleanup, logistical center conversation. So that's one we have. Does anyone else have any concerns? Maybe something you heard or maybe you said in the first activity? And again, this is about dust and other particle matter sources. And feel free, to throw it in the chat too. But yeah, any ideas?
Yo puedo opinar, Marina.
Marina would like to provide her opinion regarding that question. It is of concern because I worked in the study of that company and it was really of concern, all of the pollution. Now, my concern is this, to ensure that they do a good cleanup because we know it's super contaminated. Sometimes we see the area and it looks like there's nothing wrong, but here it is really polluted or contaminated, and we don't want that to cause more problems to our lungs, to the allergies, asthma that we suffer. Yes, I want to ensure that that cleanup is going to be done. I don't know if it's going to be out in the open or inside, but do the cleanup in a manner that those pollutants don't contaminate our community.
That was all amazing. Thank you for adding that. And we got your comments down right now, adding it to the Jamboard. I did want to redirect the group to the chat. There is some more, like not details, some more just research for y'all to give an opinion or a fact. So feel free to look through that as well. And then also Jamaica said, is there a grandfather clause for another type of polluting company to back in? Anyone have any? It's okay if no one has an answer, but that is a really good question to bring up. But if no one has an answer, you can also throw your answer in the chat. We can move on to come back. Got you. We can move on to the second one, just for like time's sake, since we got one down, unless someone else has anything to add for what is the concern. We're gonna move on to what do we know? Anyone know anything? Anything come up for folks personally when it comes to dust pollutants in East Oakland?
I know something personally.
Yeah, what's up?
So this is Marika, and when it comes to dust, and Melani, when it comes to dust pollutants in East Oakland, it's not just making people sick, but it's like killing people because of cancer and emphysema and CPOD, and the debris is like everywhere. Like you can, depending on where you park your car, you can see like layers of dust on your car and stuff. And on people's front steps, there's often layers of dust, like visible. And even when you're walking on the sidewalk, you can sometimes see your footprints in layers of dust. This is what I know.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that, honestly, because that's valid. I've seen it too, and it's very dusty out here, like real bad. Does anyone else, anything come to mind personally you've seen, or maybe a friend came over and was like, guess what I saw? Oh, Jamaica said, we know that some of the medical issues don't always show up right away. It could be over time. That is a valid fact. a lot of, diseases, viruses, just anything related to sickness, like it can sneak up on you. Oh, I have one. Unless anyone else has something, not a lot of people have proper health care. So
Right.
even if they're having issues, they can't go to they don't have a primary doctor, they're probably used to just going to the emergency room or like a health clinic.
A quick fix, a Band-Aid instead of a real repair.
Yep, exactly.
Going through it now.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Anyone else have anything to add to that section? What do we know? Because clearly y'all know stuff, y'all said stuff. But we can move on unless anyone else. Okay. What is the
Sí,
consequence?
algo rápido yo, ¿verdad? Sabemos que el 2.5
Something quickly. We know that 2.5, you can't see it, but it exists. And it's in with the dust, right? Sometimes we don't see when it's coming down upon us, but rather once it's on our car, in our homes. For example, right here, it's always full of dust. And sometimes you can't see that chemical, that 2.5. We discovered it with machines. I did that test and we were able to detect it. Sometimes the community cannot see it, but they can feel it, and it's causing a lot of illnesses. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a very valid point to bring up. We literally can't see it, until it's to the worst point. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, moving on to what is the consequence? Okay, cool. Thank you, Diana. People with respiratory diseases such as asthma or bronchitis may find it harder to breathe as air pollution can worsen their conditions.
Mm-hmm. Or COPD.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have to carry around an oxygen pack after a while.
Mm-hmm, literally.
Which costs money, which is expensive.
Mm-hmm. And you got to have a doctor's referral, so you got to see a doctor.
And it's irreversible.
Mm-hmm. Also, inhalers is a good one because I know a lot of friends that have inhalers, and like I had a friend that had an asthma attack, and we had to run down to, some CVS or something, and they were not trying to give it to us because she wasn't physically there. She had an asthma attack. Sorry, side story. Also, thank you, Carly, for putting that in the chat.
And I would say there's also other long-term illnesses like that we may not know about, like neurological issues. Or people having like higher incidences of things like Alzheimer's or multiple sclerosis or other illnesses like that. Other autoimmune diseases, diabetes, even.
No, that's a good valid point, truly. Because yeah, all this stuff affects everyone long term.
Right. And it's in the air. So
studies,
you know how we have community gardens, it goes into the food, or the stuff we store on underground that we pull and eat and put into our bodies. So that too.
Yeah. Is anyone
Y'all
else?
scared me now.
Oh, you said what? Sorry.
I said y'all scaring me now.
Okay, we're gonna slide down to the last section, which is what is the solution? Right now, what we have written down is consider an indirect source rule. These rules typically require facilities to meet emission standards and by mandating options such as zero emissions. I'm like, oh, I'm zoomed in. I was like, why can't I see the rest? I think that's it. But yes, what is the solution? And also try to use the resources that were provided in the chat or anything that comes to your brain. Oh, I did miss a part. Zero emission vehicles and solar panels. But yes, what do y'all think? What could be the solution for all this dustiness?
I was going to put it in the chat, it's Jamaica, but that's why I asked about the grandfather clause, because if there isn't any, then, we just need to keep moving it to where they have to go, because there's no reason why there needs to be a whole, and it's not just a street, it's blocks upon blocks, that this, industry gets to be in East Oakland when it isn't in other neighborhoods, this specific industry. So, as much as they don't want it in theirs, like these grandfather clauses and other things got to go.
Yeah, it's valid. Like, yes. And honestly, we could definitely ask about that in the main group chat as well too. But does anyone else have anything to add to a solution?
Yeah, I have two things. I would say the zero emissions is definitely needed, and also more greenery, more planting, more parks that would absorb what's out here now and help to buffer the the effect of all of these chemicals and particles we're being affected by.
I
And I
agree.
would say, Miss Carol, then Parks and Recs needs to make sure that it's like this hamster wheel. They don't have funding, or when the city doesn't have funding, then they start pulling from the general. It's this vicious cycle.
Yep, exactly. And this
I
has been
don't
going
think
on
it's
forever. It's not just Oakland, it's all over the Bay Area.
Amen. I think it's not a funding issue. I think it's a lazy issue too, because they have resources that help with emissions, but people are not willing to do the research too.
The challenge is that the general fund may have money, but then they start shifting money around, and because, like you're saying, there are no studies, no data, no documentation. With whatever we can't chart, then they'll just be like, well, this is all anecdotal, but we have real numbers here. We know that, the Oakland Hills needs X, Y, and Z, and we're going to move that money into
them, right?
Yeah.
I agree, because I've seen some stuff online, right? They have a bus stop, and it's a bus stop, but it has algae in the bus stop, and it connect. It cleans the air. It does some kind of emissions control. But they have new developments, but people are not willing to invest in these developments, especially in our community.
So we need to become a priority for this. This work needs to become a priority, and these requirements and recommendations were being made that we're making need to become a requirement and a priority.
Sorry to interject, y'all spitting hella facts. People do need to do better. And we know who we're talking about. But let's move on to the next one. Since we finished this one, great job. I'll give some a round of hands. But yeah, do we jump to the just zoomed in hella. Okay, there we go. Okay, on to our next concern. Recycling and waste related industrial activities like Davis Street Station. Any other concerns that come to mind?
I have a few. This is the one we left off of. Accidents happen every day, and it's fire season. What would happen if a fire happened at that location? What the impact would be on the community, and do they have protocols in place to prevent that? Or if it was, what would they do to assist the community?
I like that. That's a good one. Thank you.
I guess the other concern is how much of that can you upcycle? And whatever's left, what happens to it? Because, some of those materials, I'm just going to say, I don't know if it's the waste management and it's a bus. I don't know if they take, buses, but how much of a bus can decompose?
No, that's valid, honestly. I'd be wondering too, like, what is really recycled? Any other concerns? All good. If not, you can obviously throw it in the chat or just speak out. But we're going to move on to the next one for time. What do we know? Davis Street Station is responsible for approximately 51% of PM 2.5 emissions from permitted sources in East Oakland. I am forgetting what you told me earlier, Carly, about the report thing. This is from, I believe, a Richmond report.
Right. This is from the emissions report that we sent out as a resource, and also the one that Stephen Reed was going over from the Air District earlier in the presentation.
Thank you. But yeah, what do we...
Puedo contestar la pregunta esa que dice, ¿cuál es la solución, verdad?
Marina wants to answer the question, well, what is the solution? The fourth one, right? Because she can't see quite good because it's kind of small, but she wants to be able to answer that question.
Oh yeah, we can scroll it down so you could see it. / I could just read it real quick if I could.
Clara, yeah, if you tell Marina, she can also like
Ya lo veo.
her screen.
All right. Marina says I can see it now.
Okay, cool.
What is the solution, right? So that's what I would like to see. To answer that question, it's very complicated. We think that we can quickly give a solution, but that's not how it works. We want buses and autos that are zero emission, but we have to think of the poor people can't get an electrical car because they're so expensive. And I know that there's a program that helps you change your car, but it's just a help. It's not a lot as to what these people have to pay. So it can benefit the rich family, the family that has a little bit more money, but us as poor, we can't buy a $60,000 car, right? So this is going to cost us to bring a solution long-term, because we can say tomorrow or in a year, no, we can't change that. We can't change that. Solution is long-term. And we need to have a process for the change so that our air quality is clean. We need to get rid of the trash areas because that's contaminating us, and maybe build more trees or plant more trees. We need more money to invest to create more parks. There's a lot of solution that we can give. As solar electricity, for example, that's expensive for some people. But I've heard that there's a program that benefits a community. I hope that's the case so that we don't have a lot of contamination, but I greatly doubt it. So truly, there's a lot of cost in this change. To come up with a solution, we need a lot of years of process. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That was so much wisdom, honestly, and facts, because we do need money to do this, and we also need step-by-step, planning process. But that's why these are important to, speak your mind so we can hash out everything. Ooh, oh, Carly put something in the chat. Personally thinking about composting, some widespread education from the city is needed on composting, and even receiving compost bags would be helpful for families, which struggling families is going to spend extra money on composting bags, which struggling families is going to spend time out of their busy days looking up the emissions reductions with composting. That is facts. I'm a farmer and compost is way too expensive. And this city should be offering up something like that. I know Berkeley does it. There's a spot where they have free compost. But yeah, thank you, Carly. And then Carol put in the chat also, solar panel programs are around. Most are lease the panels, which are owned and maintained by the company that supplies the solar panels. Facts, that's real. Anything else y'all are feeling for this one? It could be could be the concern. Oh, Carol put in the chat, solar panel program. Oh, wait. Oh, just kidding. Someone put an emoji. It popped up again like it was a new message. Sorry. But yeah, does anyone have anything else to add to this Jamboard? If not, we might have time to jump to the next one.
Yeah, I was saying maybe copy the one about trees and greenery to this one, and then we can move on.
Yes, valid. We need more trees. I vote for more fruit trees because male trees give us allergies. But yes, more greenery always. And then if y'all think of any other ones, you can always add to the Jamboard. Oh, another one. Carly said, maybe even some incentives from the city or air district for more families getting solar panels. Maybe it starts off as leasing and becomes owning, or maybe it's just owning. That is hella valid. More support for sure, because solar panels are a lot. You got to understand a lot about it. You know, even though people just think, oh, we have 6 minutes. So we can run through this next one.
También quería comentar. Ay. Quería comentar que también nuestros arroyos.
Marina, I'd also like to mention that our creeks are also contaminated and they need to clean. They need to be cleaned.
That's real. Thank you for adding that. Okay, cool. So on to the next one. What is a concern? Construction, track outs, other fugitive dust. It's an interesting one. But yes, what concern? And this is gonna be the last concern. If anyone has anything. Or even a question, maybe.
I was just gonna say, as far as like construction, or other kind of like fugitive dust, you know, there's a lot of products that go in, as it relates to like construction. I'll just use an example, like a house, like your marble counters or even synthetic marble counters, right? You have to cut it. Dust is going into the air, but we don't know all of what was put into those artificial counters, or even if it is real, you know, marble. Once it goes into dust, there can be other things like formaldehyde, other things that, you know, made it what it was, if it's something that's synthetic or like a look-alike. So just being aware of, you know, some of that, or even when you're mixing, what is it, like concrete, right? Your first pour, before you put the water in, dust is flying everywhere. So it's like, if you do that a lot, or you're pouring a lot of concrete, you know, just thinking about those things too.
That's very valid. That makes me think, honestly, of like construction workers and how they have to wear all these specialized outfits and masks and stuff, but like we just walk by the construction work with, you know, most likely not a mask on.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it's also when they start sanding the gypboard on when they put the walls up before they paint them, that there's a lot of dust too, similar to the concrete and uh, stone cutting and so on.
No, it's valid. Any other
Por
concern?
ejemplo, el plomo, ¿verdad? Que se encuentra en las paredes.
For example, the lead that you find in walls.
Yep, the lead is still here. Don't let no one fool you. It's still here.
That's true.
Lead paint.
Yeah, I did a renovation in my house, my bathrooms, and the original bathroom had the city of Oakland now, when you do permitted work, they come out and do a lead assessment. So if you are taking any of those walls down and you get a permit, they come out and test it, and then you have to get a company to come out and take that lead wall, the plastered walls out that have lead in it. So it could be a big expense. People can't afford to do it.
No, I bet.
And it's harmful.
No, for real. Nothing to mess with. If anyone doesn't have a concern, we can jump down to what do we know? We have about 2 minutes left of this breakout room. So yeah, anyone have any thoughts or what do we know? I'm gonna skip the reading part. I have confidence y'all could read that. But yeah, what do we know?
Entering our homes and our lungs.
Facts. Jamaica, yeah, brought up a good point. Where does the asbestos and lead products go whenever they get, quote unquote, cleaned out of a house or wherever it was in?
They go to places like Argent. He's one of the few. Bill's company is one of the few that do that.
Anything else we know about this? If not, I'll just jump down to what is the consequence.
Yo puedo hablar, sí. La
I can speak, Marina says. The consequences it affects us as human beings, primarily to our children. I'm going to give a testimony. My grandson,
Por eso comenté.
he was discovered with lead in his blood. That's why I mentioned this. And it can happen to all of us. I also have a friend who died of cancer because as a result of asbestos. Asbestos is a silent chemical. And you realize that you are sick with this when the lungs are all affected and there's nothing else you can do about this. And so we are the consequence of everything that we smell, of everything of the pollution that exists, and that we don't see it, but we breathe it. And that hurts or damages our eyes, our nose, all that virus, all those chemicals, all those dust, all the chemicals that are found in the oils, because we don't know what kind of chemicals are involved in that, but we inhale that. Our poor community, because we're the rich, live, they don't have any industrial areas like we do here. So we are the consequence of the diseases that all this causes us.
Thank you. I appreciate that because it's very valid. We are the consequence. Also, we will be reconnecting in a minute. I think the minute's now because I was sent a minute ago. But y'all did an amazing job. Thank you for being down to give opinions and facts and stories too. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Becca. Great job.
You did a good job. You did the job with Becca.
Yeah.
That's right.
I
can do this like once a month. Then I burn out very much. Can you have Addison screen share again? You did well. Yeah, thank you. That was really good. That was yeah. You did well. Good results.
Yeah, listen, in person, you don't get to all three of them.
Oh, yeah.
API and they did get the diesel kind of thing, you know.
No worries. You're gonna type it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and get it started, Alicia, whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, everyone, coming back into the main room. And yeah, thank you all for your great participation, engaging discussions, and really thinking about your community, and helping us really understand those concerns. And so wanted to briefly touch on next steps here. At a future steering committee meeting, we'll be brainstorming concerns on the built environment and land use. CBE and Air District will use today's brainstorming and synthesize the information that we garnered to create concern statements. So the co-leads will bring these statements back to you at another steering committee meeting to start developing strategies with everyone. And next slide, please. And just in practice, again, this means that, we have our focus areas. So this being commercial and industrial sources, which identifies our shared concerns within the community. We want to create concern statements based on what we know. And each of these concerns can lead to multiple strategies, and each of those strategies can lead to multiple actions. We can use different types of SERP strategies and actions to address these concerns. And some of these are listed in the orange box on the right, which we've also heard from you from the brainstorming. And so we are tight on time, and we're actually at time for this segment, and we really want to make time for our next agenda topic. So please reach out to me or other support staff for any questions. We're always available for you. And wanted to pass it to Carly for our next segment.
Great. That was a great activity. I hope everyone got some great things down. I know our group did. Now I'm going to move into Argent Tour discussion report out with Carol, Marina, and Gabrielle. And so I'm going to be the moderator for this section, and it will go in the order of Carol, Gabrielle, and Marina. And they'll give their experience from the Argent Tour and the post-tour discussion back at the end of January. And yeah, I'll pass it to Carol, and I'll include a link in the chat for you in a bit.
And thanks, appreciate you getting us organized to do this. So Gabrielle, Marina, and I, we're going to give you an overview of our thoughts and outstanding questions that have come up during, before, during, and after the Argent Tour. And then we also want to look at suggested next steps from the Argent Tours. With the CSC today, we only have 15 minutes or less. So instead of looking for having a question and answer, we really want to just not look for answers today, but instead want to have make sure the entire CSC is informed and also at the same level, have everyone at the same level as far as information is concerned. And then we also want to leverage the Argent Tour and Bill's CSC representation and his leadership as a business in East Oakland to move forward with things like community engagement, transparency, and tactics to make sure that the businesses are contributing and are accountable for Clean East Oakland. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is highlight some of the unanswered questions that were around the regulatory processes and permits as an example. And I think that we're going to have the questions actually put into the chat shortly because there were some that came up. I don't see them coming up yet. Let's see.
Just sent them.
Pardon me?
Just sent the questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so there are questions like how many trucks arrive daily and how far are they coming from? How many of Argent's workers are from East Oakland that work there? How many missions does Argent create each year? What is the dust that Argent processes? And then on the tour, Bill described the solution to track out would be changing the configuration of operations at Baldwin Street so that customers never interfere with mud and dust and therefore could not track. So our question for that is how has he already begun work? Has he already begun work to make this change? And what's his projected time frame for that? What's the date to see that change happening? And then there were some CSC member questions. Sorry to run through these like this, but just kind of want to make sure they're all out there. What's the amount of dust that is being released with cement crushing? And how are you keeping it within the site? Are Argent employees cleaning it with water? What happens to the fugitive dust? What are the levels of fugitive dust? How does Argent compare to EPA acceptable levels outside of the site? Argent's purple air monitors data isn't live to the public yet. Is there a reason why the data isn't live yet? And what type of air monitors are needed to track the dust created on site? And then it looks like the last question was how much truck traffic is associated with the site, which I think is similar to one of the first ones as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so from...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think from... yeah, from there, I think I wanted to send it over to Gabrielle,
Sure,
who
okay.
wanted to speak to.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so after the tour, you know, I was pretty impressed by what I saw. I did want to do some research. And just to be clear, this is an opportunity for Argent to, you know, to show us that they can be transparent with us, moving forward so that we can actually collaborate and work together. So with that sort of, I want to just make sure that that's clear. You know, there has been a history with Argent Materials of kind of taking a ask for forgiveness, not permission approach to things. In 2015, Argent got a permit for a crushing machine. It was supposed to be mobile. In the permit, they stated that it was going to be used for only 6 months, that it was going to be stored at the site but used at Candlestick Park. That it was only going to be used for 6 months, and that's a CARB permit. They regulate mobile sources, so they didn't go to BACMed, they went to CARB. Got this permit, said it was going to be a mobile thing. What actually happened was that it was operating there for about 2 years. At the Argent site, they did get a notice, you know, and then, you know, they did get a notice of violation. They were out of compliance, and they were able to get a permit because it turns out that, and I don't know if this is still the case, but you know, at the time, BACMed regulations had an exception for concrete recycling operations. So they didn't even really, they just kind of rubber stamped it. So it wasn't even necessary to go through all that, but that is what happened. That is a concern. You know, there have been some more recent NOVs for operating without a permit, unpermitted stockpiles, not tracking data between 2019 and 2022. In 2023, July 2023, there was an NOV for unpermitted operating without a permit. I believe it was unpermitted stockpiles. I could double check that. And so there is kind of a repeating history of sort of, I would say kind of just a lack of transparency. So I just want to put that out there. It is a concern. My understanding is also that the current expansion is not yet permitted. And I would like to see really more, you know, in light of all that, I really do want to see those questions answered. And I want to see some signs that that there is going to be that transparency and true transparency, and really working in a transparent way with the district, going actually, you know, going to the right people and making sure that that it's not just about being by the letter of the law, but actually the spirit of it, which is to reduce the emission, because the dust has really caused some serious quality of life and health issues for people living around that site. That's all I have to say for now. This is an invitation to start a discussion about hopefully getting these questions answered, and so that we can actually have like a real collaboration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. And then now we will pass it to Marina to close it up. And she will have 3 minutes as well to share out. And then we'll have questions in the end, and I will moderate that. And so, Marina, go ahead.
Eso. Marina, proceda.
Mi nombre es Marina Muñoz.
Good evening, my name is Marina. Good evening, my name is Marina Muñoz. And I am here. I want to ensure that the employees that are here at Argent, that they be for Oakland's community, and also information where these individuals who are interested in working there can apply. Another question that I have, how could you help our affected community? How many events per year take place? I would like to know how many events take place during a year. I want to ensure that those replies or those answers could be given to us. Our community wants to know if we are being affected by so much contamination and pollutants. We want help. There are individuals with allergies, asthma. There are no doctors to help us. And what can these companies that are causing the contamination, the pollution, regarding the materials that are received how are those materials are being cleaned without pollutants to be sure that those materials are not contaminated. I want to ensure that this company is not polluting. What are the steps that are going to be followed from here moving forward? Because I am worried that they are working, they've got their machinery, that supposedly they are cleaning the dust, but that dust doesn't go away because car after car that goes in, those are being polluted. The individuals who are walking across the street, we are being contaminated. I want to know what are the steps that are going to be taken so that our community does not continue to be contaminated and that the pollution ends. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marina and Carol and Gabrielle. So now we can go to the next slide, please. So I want to reserve this time for East Oakland community. Sorry, not me. Carol, Gabrielle, and Marina want to reserve this time for East Oakland community members to speak up, ask any questions, either for Carol, Marina, and Gabrielle, or just in general. And for the ones that they do not think we can get to now, we can record them for later. Yeah, so I want to leave the floor for East Oakland community members. Does anyone have any questions for them or in general?
A quick question, Carly. Is Bill on the line? I don't see him. I see there's a phone number. I'm thinking that's maybe him.
He's in person.
Pardon me?
He's in person.
Oh, he's in person. Okay, great. Which we're glad to see because we really see him as a business leader to move this effort forward with other businesses.
I just wanted to say that was an in-depth report you guys did. And I'm pretty sure that somebody has some interesting questions for Bill about what he plans to do. So could we get one of those?
I don't know if I'll just ask it, but what do we know about the leadership structure? Is it like a person doing this? Is it a group? Do they have a high turnover rate? But just the whole history of the lack of transparency and the bait and switch, is this being done by like one person, a group of people, or is it just like sort of, you know, people are new and competent, don't know, that kind of thing?
I actually can answer that. Just
Yeah.
looking at the applications and the NOVs and the letters, that they were mostly coming from one employee. And it wasn't you, but it was another employee at Argent. You know, so yeah, it's been kind of consistent for the most part.
Is that person still employed?
That's a Bill question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, do you want me to answer?
It's a yes or no question, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nuance to every question and answer. In this particular case, we did have a crusher that we leased from an Arizona facility and used at Candlestick Stadium. We recycled all of Candlestick Stadium, which I'm pretty proud of. But we also had the exact same crusher at our yard. So there were two different permit applications. What ended up happening, and it's been years, so I don't remember exactly, but I know that in some cases, and we still have a situation where we've applied for a permit almost 6 years ago. And
Sorry, just gonna cut in. I think somebody said it's hard to hear on Zoom. And
Yeah.
also just to recognize we have 1 more minute for this section.
Yeah, and if there's any, I was actually hoping, and this is what me and Carol and Maureen had discussed, we would actually like you to digest this information and come back with like
sure.
I don't want to put you on the spot either, so I'd rather you have time to.
I appreciate that. And I really
Yeah,
would.
totally. Exactly.
I'd like to know if you're open to changing leadership or adding some new perspectives to your leadership team, and if you think your leadership team has been doing a good job. But that's something, again, at the next meeting we can think about.
Yeah, I would like to give you time.
I appreciate that.
And Bill, I'm sorry, there's another question. It looks like I'm gonna say, this is the beginning of a bigger effort. We're excited to have you, Bill, from Argent on the CSC, representing businesses and showing up as a leader in this space. So yeah, we definitely want to give you the time that you need so that you can come back to us maybe by the next meeting with the questions that we threw on here today answered, and looking for ways to resolve some of the questions and issues that we've come across.
And I'm just gonna quickly close this out since we have 5 more minutes. So just want to raise up Jamie's the comment in the chat. In addition to Gabrielle's request for transparency, I'd ask for accountability and repair for harm, even if it was unintentional. Getting a permit for 6 months and then using something for 2 years is not okay. And I will pass it along to one of the co-chairs to close us out and for next steps. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks all y'all for the great report back. The Argent tour was really cool, and I think we had some specific action steps coming out of that. I know also Mr. Charles was working on a tree planting with Argent. So yeah, it definitely would be great to kind of follow up about this matter in future CSC meetings. But yeah, that's the end of our time here today. As always, please complete the post-meeting survey. The links are there. I think also they'll probably be dropped in the chat pretty soon. Thank y'all so much for joining us in general, and I hope people appreciated the grounding in the beginning. Also, I know all the rooms had some really great strategy development, so really excited just to continue to push that forward. And our next meeting is on July 11th. And then I see we have an EJ announcement from Gabrielle.
Oh, darn it. Okay. Okay, so this is, I didn't come prepared with like a link for this. So CBE is doing a building resilience hub. We are doing a survey from East Oakland residents. A resilience hub is basically if there's a disaster like an earthquake or fire or smoke, whatever, it's a place where you can go to get help. It's also like an ongoing community resource. And we want to hear from not just CSC members, but East Oakland residents, what they want or will need in case of a disaster or an emergency. I don't have a link to the survey right now. You can email me, and I have a CBE email address now. It's gabrielle@cbecal.org. And if you could put it in the chat, or you can talk to me after the meeting. But basically, if you just, or even just tell me you're interested and I will send you the information. But it's basically just a survey how long you need in a disaster. And we want East Oakland residents to do it. And also it's online, so you can do it with me on paper, or you can do it online. You can share the online one, whatever. But we really want to get that out there and start hearing from people about what you need in a disaster, because that's really important. And that's a big part of climate justice also, because a lot of the disasters that we're anticipating are related to climate change, and they're going to affect us, you know.
And it's fire season right now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, oh yeah, you're going to write it down. Thank you. And then, yeah, somebody can put that email in the chat, and, or, you know, my email's also, you know, for CSC members, my email's on the like list of emails too. So, well, that's my personal email. So CSC members can email me my personal email, but other people should email that one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's really important. And I know, you know, this is a planning kind of policy and process, but I know we want to take action now because all of these things are happening in our communities right now. So I think, yeah, Carly dropped your email in the chat. I think also she'll put the link in the debrief email also. And I think people can definitely tap in with CBE around some, yeah, resilience work, resilience hub, emergency kit distribution. I know.
Oh, that too. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. I know there's a lot going on. So yeah.
We'll be in touch, Gabrielle.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the folks in the chat, Carly will definitely follow up via email with the link for sure. And also Gabrielle's email, I think, directly.
Miss Cecilia has a hand up.
I just want to say one thing, is that when you attend any meeting, you should always have an introductory going around so people know who's in the room. To me, that's very important. Everybody needs to know who's who. 'Cause you don't never know when emergency may arrive. It's always best to know who's in the room with you. That's very important. That's all I want to say.
Also, I know CPR.
That's all, yeah.
That's all wisdom.
We're
wisdom
on fire
is.
extinguisher.
All right, Miss Cecilia.
Well, it's the truth, it's the truth though. But you don't know what they have.
No, you're right.
Well,
No.
well, on that note, definitely
Yeah.
happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Have a good night.
Night.